drag on at times sometimes. Everybody knows that. I went to a New Year's dinner a few years ago with a friend of mine, a name everybody in the room would know. And we had a great time at a place called Magic Castle. Magic Castle is this amazing place out in California where magicians go to learn their craft. And then they practice it in front of a live audience. So if you're a member of Magic Castle, you get to go watch this. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but in the intelligence community, Spyland, the guys like to practice magic tricks. When I was a young kid, the guys are always constantly trying to show me the latest trick. Sleight of hand, distraction, and suck you in to see if they could pull it off, see if you could figure it out. So while you're going through this whole thing, sometimes you'd see something, you'd think you just about have it. A lot of times that was the art of deception because you thought you had it. The 3-card Monte. You're watching the cards, the magician is watching your eyes to see if you're on the right card or not. When he knows you've locked on a card, trying to keep going with it that's the wrong card, that's where he stops. He'll keep doing that to make sure that he's watching what you're doing. Think about the magic that's going on in the world right now. Who are the magicians watching? Watching the American people to see if we've finally given up watching the wrong card. They have the women that have all the flourishes on the hair and the backside, and they track the men. The magician calls you away over to himself, away from the other person, while she's preparing the next trick. He's doing all sorts of things with his hands, and there's the flash bang and the boom. It distracts you. So, in this world of illusion, we're being immersed in their game, where they're trying to capture America. You probably have heard, most of you here, about the Brunson case. And of course it says that on January 6th, Congress voted without the benefit of the information of what was found in the investigation. What investigation? Well, the reason everybody showed up on January 6th around the country was because of a sequence of events. September 12th, 2018, President Trump signed an executive order that required that in all future elections, there would be investigation prior to and during the election cycle for any federal election involving federal positions. And that within 45 days after the election, the Director of National Intelligence would provide a report to the world, to the country, to the President, to the agency heads, concerning any indications of foreign interference within 45 days. Now, what kind of an investigation was to be done? Was an investigation using Department of Homeland Security and the 17 intelligence agencies that it encompasses. People like CIA, FBI, NSA, DEA, IRS, CISPA, Cyber Intelligence Security, NRO, National Reconnaissance Office, runs all the satellites. And then the Director of National Intelligence, which is the 17th agency, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Director Radcliffe at the time. He's kind of the manager of the three-ring circus of those 17 agencies to gather all that intelligence. So he had a job. And that job was to take that information, compile it into a report within 45 days of the election, and present it to the President and the various other agency heads. 3 days before that report was due, on December 15th, he did some media interviews, and he said, yes, China interfered in the election. But no, I'm not going to have a report to present in the next 3 days, most likely. because some of the agency heads were not providing the information. What? They weren't going to provide the intelligence information about whether there was foreign interference in the election? What in the world are you talking about? In a military command situation, that is disobeying a direct order. The executive order was a direct order. You will do an investigation and you will provide it to the president and the various agency heads. When they did not do that, it's called insubordination. People get court-martialed over that. You could put everybody in danger, life and limb. Many of you will remember that General Flynn, Pat Byrne, General Flynn's brother Joe Flynn, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal attorney Cipollone, a handful of people all showed up at the White House on the 45th day, which was December 18th of 2020. And they talked to him into the late hours. Pat Byrne has talked about it in this meeting. They thought they had the president convinced. Sidney Powell was going to come back the next day and start working to write a act for invoking the Insurrection Act. Because of course it was an insurrection. Think about that. Agency heads aren't providing their information. Do they have the legal right to deny the information from the largest intelligence gathering machine ever created on planet Earth from being provided to the president and the various agency heads? Do they have the legal right to deny the information of election interference by a foreign country?
No.
Not on your life. Now the question is, what information would have gotten to President Trump and the other various agency heads and to Congress that might have damaged the agency heads and their political partners and their financial partners so badly that they were willing, in fact needed, to be insubordinate, to deny a direct order from the President of the United States, an executive order. What could be so damaging that they were willing to put their careers and their freedom on the line? What would we have found out about what happened in the election that they decided they took it upon themselves to make a decision that affected every person on this planet, not just America? What do you mean? They don't vote in our election. Well, they sure feel the wrath of what happens when things go wrong in America. Does anybody in this room think we'd be on the verge of nuclear war in the Ukraine right now if Trump was still in office?
No way.
Not a prayer. Okay? Do you think that China would be increasing the complexity and the frequency of the spy balloons going over America? It's one thing to have satellites way off out in space, but when you get down into the atmosphere and you get past certain thermal layers that can block better imagery at the surface, and certain technologies and mask what's going on the surface from the satellite, they get down below those layers. You know, the balloon the other day wasn't at 100,000 feet going over Montana and other places. It was 19,000. Okay. So, anybody think they get to pull that one off under Trump?
No way.
No, don't kid yourself. So, elections have consequences. And the whole world is hanging on by the fingernails right at this moment. Because a handful of ultimately very small, self-serving people who, by various magicians' tricks, got into control of the most important lever-pulling positions in the entire American system, decided that they weren't going to provide the information from their intelligence gathering operations, their staff, their machine to the president. Think about this. Oh, the FBI, they're all bad. Well, maybe they aren't all bad. Maybe through mutual self-promotion, picking the winners to get to the top, a handful of monsters, and they are monsters.
That's right.
A handful of monsters blocked all the information that was gathered at the FBI about foreign interference in the election. A handful, a tiny little group of monsters, dangerous monsters, blocked the information coming from CIA, NSA, CISPA. But what could it be? What could it be? It was so dangerous they could not let you hear about it.
That's right.
What was in it?
Treason, treason, treason.
Who could be interfering in our election? Russia, Russia, Russia. That's why Trump signed the bill. Made the executive order. It was because they were accusing him of being put in office by the Russians with their help, their assistance. But Director Radcliffe, who had access to all the information, he didn't say Russia when he talked to the media. He said China. China. But Congress, days later, when the report wasn't there, without the benefit of any of the intelligence report, from the largest intelligence gathering operation on planet Earth in history, those 17 agencies represent the largest intelligence gathering machine ever created by man. All of your tax money funds that. They're not just able to make their own decisions for their own ways. They represent us, our interests, America's interest. And they decided that you don't deserve to know what they found out.
Treason.
What could it be that they were blocking? When we went to war, a lot of people think this is World War III right now. I say it frequently. It's not World War III. This is World War IV. We won World War III. We engaged the Soviet Union. It was a four-part plan. First of all, we drove energy prices down to the ground. Had the Saudis pumping oil like crazy because we hold their leash whether they like it or not. Drove energy prices down because the biggest income source to Russia was their energy sales. And then they funded their military machine and all their mischief around the world. So we brought energy prices down so low that across Russia, they walked away from billions and billions of dollars of equipment, just left it in the field. It wasn't even worth putting gas in it, driving it someplace else and try to sell it. Nobody wanted it. Shut down their oil production systems around the Soviet Union. In the course of it, we nearly took out Texas, but we ultimately won the energy war. Do you think we're in an energy war right now again? Something's going on there. The second thing we did is we chased them on the military. They were in the middle of the war in Afghanistan. We sifted in mechanisms that allowed them to take them on numerous fronts, not just one thing, It was anti-aircraft missiles. It was mines. It was Tennessee mules to carry the stuff in through the various areas that you can't get through with a regular motorized vehicle. And through a series of activities, we were able to give those fighters the materials to take on the whole Russian army, and eventually the Russians withdrew, especially after a particular incident with some mines during a sandstorm at the largest airfield in Afghanistan. They took out $200 million worth of aircraft after the dust settled, and sneaky guys had gone in and put mines by the wheels of every single aircraft on the runway. And then snipers went out and kaplink, 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 kaplink after the dust storm. Took out $200 million worth of aircraft in 15 minutes with $100,000 worth of mines. Nicaragua, one of my friends, Larry Nichols, filmed the Hind-D helicopters in flight over the Contras. And we came up with a strategy where we brought in $1,300 a piece Chinese manufactured red-eye copy missiles, very cheap. They just go for the heat source, and came up with a tactic for using them. And in a few weeks, we'd taken out $30 million worth of their aircraft with a few $100,000 of cheap missiles. They couldn't play the game because it was too expensive. We took on the Soviet Union on the religious grounds, the moral grounds, brought the Pope in. Poland was about a church revival across Poland, going against the atheist communist mentality. We helped the Russian Jews get to Israel and broke their back on their hatred of religion because the people turned to God. But the last thing was we went after them on their currency. And in the currency, we created a mechanism that attracted rubles out of the country, paid a lot of Western money for it. It's a long story, I've spoken about it many times before. And then at a certain point, we started flooding their economy with their own rubles, flushed them back in there. And the ruble on the black market went from 40 rubles to $1 American dollar to 200 rubles in a matter of months because they went through an inflationary period, broke their back, and Gorbachev called President Bush and asked for help, and Bush said, well, I see the wall's still up. Reagan said, tear this wall down. And within hours, they retreated. America's under attack, and it's the money that's the last phase. The money that came in through Switzerland on mirrored accounts at UBS Bank that bought our election system. That's what you're going to find out over the next many months in Congress. What were they blocking? Chinese money bought your election system at 50 different levels, and their players. See, we favored, when we did our transactions, Yeltsin people over Gorbachev people. We paid both sides. But we gave more always to the Yeltsin people during the whole masquerade, the whole magic act. And so the Gorbachev people were getting money, but the Yeltsin people always got more. So we picked a winner, and over time it showed up. All that money coming in from those foreign accounts through 50, 60, 70 different mechanisms, and primarily the mechanism that owns the voting machines, which is what you're going to find out about in these congressional hearings. Our election system was bought top to bottom with Chinese money through accounts, mostly through Switzerland, but through Indonesia and other locations, drug money, etc., to control the magic act of who you looked like you might have voted. And what Director Radcliffe would have told the president and the various agency heads is that China bought the election. And those people that blocked that information through their insubordination, blocked that information from going to Congress. Congress voted to certify an election knowing full well that there was information that the election was overturned by Chinese money. Everything else we're going to talk about here today is how do we counter that? How do we recapture control of our election system? How do we recapture control? Number one, the machines cannot be trusted. And the money that's coming in from these foreign entities to control how the election is counted, the people that it favors. We chose Yeltsin over Gorbachev. Eventually, Yeltsin was in, Gorbachev was out because we favored the way the money went in. That's what they're doing. It's going to both sides, and it's vacillated. At an earlier time, it was mostly going to one side, then it switched and goes mostly to the other side. Both sides are ripping us off. We must stop the machine voting. We have to look at where the money's coming from. We need to call, and you'll see it over the course of this year, all of those agency heads who refused, in violation of their oaths, refused to provide the intelligence about Chinese interference, and all those people that voted to certify an election in Congress without first finding out what the facts were and not requiring those agency heads to come in and give us the information. Show us what happened. You don't have the right to deny the American people the information that they paid for. And you don't have the right to be insubordinate to the elected President of the United States. Thanks, Juan.
George Soros bought the election company.
George Soros is a creation of MI6. British intelligence created George Soros. Everything that you're seeing.
That's not true.
That's true. And I'll tell you also, who attacked President Trump? Where did the dossier come from? That was a Brit operation, top to bottom. That all came out of the City of London and the banking groups out of the City of London. George Soros is not his own man, any more than some of these other people are their own man in our system. Zuckerberg did not create Facebook. That was LifeLog at DARPA. He's a creation of an intelligence machine here in the United States. And the money that came from Zuckerberg to fund those drop boxes is money that came out of the intelligence community who were fighting people that have been input into our intelligence community. I'm glad to talk with you about it off there afterwards.